Ideas, the show where we look at misfires, mistakes, and miscalculations from all throughout history.
I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Albert Berg, and today's bad idea is a little bit of a departure from what we've done so far, Tony. This is not...
Depressing.
Well, yes, I think that is true. It's also not a failure.
It's just a bad idea, even if it leads to good things. Sometimes those are still bad ideas.
Yes, and we'll have some more of these on the show. I want people to be prepared. This is not a one-off thing. Sometimes bad ideas can lead to success. And today's bad idea is putting ear mites into your ear on purpose.
And who's the brave soul that decided to do this?
Well, that would be Robert A. Lopez, Tony. This man was a veterinarian, and he was in the middle of treating a cat for ear mites. And in the process of this treatment, right, the owners had brought him in. They were asking for help for their cats. There's a mother and a daughter there, and the mother says, by the way, my daughter's ears are also itching. Does it have anything to do with the ear mites that our cat has? And Robert A. Lopez opens his mouth and then shuts it again because he does not know if ear mites can be transmitted from animals to humans.
I mean, it seems like it'd be a pretty easy enough thing to do. It's just going like you go cuddle your cat's face and all of a sudden your ear's right there.
It would seem that way, but no one had ever done a test on it. And Robert A. Lopez was a 71 years old at the time that he had the idea to put ear mites into his ears. He'd been a veterinarian for 48 years.
Damn.
He did a lot of farm veterinary stuff. He worked on large farm animals. If you've read the book All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot, he was doing a lot of that kind of veterinary work, both large farm animals and also the occasional family pet. So he had seen and been through a ton of stuff. And he figured, you know what? I can do this. I'm not going to round up like some research group. You know, I don't have any money to pay some poor college students to get ear mites put into their ears. But I have ears and I have ear mites. I'm going to do it. I'm going to put ear mites into my own human ears on purpose.
I think he's overestimating the cost of college students because I'm pretty sure most of them, if you were to just get them like a 30 rack of Natty Light every week, they would probably join this experiment.
He might have also not wanted to deal with young people, Tony.
That's true.
He is 71 years old at this point. He's been through a whole heck of a lot of life. So he took the excretion of an ear mite infected cat's ear.
It's a great word for it.
Scraped all around inside this cat's ear that was all grody and stuff, and with a little scalpel or scraper tool or something, and he just shoved that right up inside his own ear.
It sounds so pleasant. Like, I'm just imagining like the reverse idea of a Q-tip where it's like, you know, you pull it out and it's been a little bit longer than it should have been since you used a Q-tip because you're not supposed to use Q-tips at all. And there's just that gunk. It's like, take that gunk from somebody else's ear and just shove it in there and get it nice and wet and roll it around.
Except it's not just somebody else. It's an animal.
Yeah.
And it's an animal where the earwax, you know, has things living in it. That's the point of the experiment, is that you wanted things to be living in this, and now you're going to put it in your ear.
That's so gross.
Unfortunately, but perhaps not surprisingly, this resulted in an infestation of ear mites in Dr. Lopez's ear. He got a result, Tony. He wanted to find out if you could transmit ear mites from animals to humans, and he found out.
And this is science.
Yes, and I have a quote from him. He said, "Immediately, I heard scratching sounds, then moving sounds as the mites began to explore my ear canal. Itching sensations then started, and all three sensations merged into a weird cacophony of sound and pain that intensified from that moment on and on."
That sounds just like the worst thing in the world. Like, I hate whenever there's anything in my ears. If there's a little water in my ears, I can't even imagine knowing that they're just scraping at the eardrum.
Just crawling around in there. You can hear their little legs tapping away on that membrane.
Yeah.
They're burrowing into your skin, probably trying to find a good place to live.
Getting ready to lay eggs.
His quote continues, "At first, I thought this wouldn't and couldn't last very long. However, as the day and evening wore on, I began to worry. The pruritus, that is the technical word for itching, was increasing. The sounds in my ear, Fortunately, I had chosen only one ear, were becoming louder as the mites traveled deeper toward my eardrum.
I feel like you could really use this to convince somebody that they were going insane. Like if you just put ear mites in, like made them think that they were hearing things and scratching and all that.
I mean, the physical sensation is pretty powerful here too. It's just torture. If you just wanted to make somebody's life real bad, just put ear mites in their ears. Over the next month, and yes, he did this for a whole month, the itching in his ears intensified until he was unable to sleep. He said by the 4th week, mite activity was 70% reduced, and I could feel the mites crawling across my face at night. Presumably to reach the other ear. I'm just imagining these mites like, this ear, it's not as hospitable as we hoped, but we've heard tell of another ear. We must trek across the face.
We got to get out to California. We'll find the gold.
However, over that month, his symptoms did improve, and eventually the infestation went away, Tony. Which is good, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want a guy who's at retirement age to have to be dealing with experiments on himself.
You've put the ear mites in your ears. You've done the experiment. You've lost a lot of sleep, which I'm sure doesn't help when you're trying to treat people's pets at 71. You also have been up all night with ear mites crawling across your face.
And large pets, too. So, like, you're dealing with some pets that are actually kind of dangerous.
Yep. In fact, I read some memoirs of this guy, this doctor, in his obituary. He's dead now, unfortunately. However, he did make it to a ripe old age. And he said that early in his veterinary career, he narrowly avoided losing an eye to a horse kick.
Oof.
And he knew people who did not narrowly avoid it. So that very much a dangerous profession. He's made it through, though, Tony. He's okay. He's found out what happens when you put ear mites in your ear. What do you think Dr. Lopez does next?
He publishes his findings.
Nope. He puts more ear mites in his ear.
Why?
Okay, so there is a good reason. He wanted to know if his body would build up an immunity to the ear mites. He needed to know if the ear mite infection went away because his immune system was attacking them. And once again, he was afflicted with scratching and pain and itching and all this terrible stuff. However, it wasn't quite as bad as the last time. This time, the infection only lasted 2 weeks, which those of you who are math whizzes will be able to figure out is half the length of the first infestation. Sensing a pattern here and displaying a sense of scientific curiosity that was perhaps not properly balanced with his sense of self-preservation, Dr. Lopez put ear mites into his ear on purpose for a 3rd time. And as he had suspected, his ear mite activity was decreased even further. Despite his unorthodox methods, Dr. Lopez learned several items of note from his self-experimentation. First, doing these experiments helped him to understand why younger cats tended to be far more susceptible to these ear mite infections than older cats. It's because their immune systems hadn't built up the resistance to the bugs. And so the ear mites, had this opportunity to get in there before they were kicked out easily. And over time, the immune system said, wait a minute, these things are bad, and built up a resistance. And apparently so does the human immune system. Secondly, he learned from personal experience that ear mites have a sleep cycle, or at least that they're more active during certain times of the day. They're actually mostly dormant during the daylight hours. Again, at least this was his personal experience with ear mites in his ears. But in the early morning and the evening, their activity was much increased. And from this, he was able to advise his people coming in with their pets. I was going to say his patients, but you're probably not going to tell the dog when to put the ear mite medicine in. But the dogs, the people, the owners of the dogs and cats, he was able to tell them, listen, I can tell you for a fact, these ear mites, they're real active in the morning and evening, so that's when you want to apply this medicine to help prevent them, because that's when it'll kill the most of them. He published his findings in the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association in 1993 in an article entitled Of Mites and Man. And the following year, he was awarded, and I'm really glad this guy won an award for this, by the way. What he went through was pretty excruciating. He was awarded an igNobel Prize for his work in the category of entomology. That's the study of bugs, not the word one, for those of you who are curious about the differences between entomology and etymology.
Yeah, very different superheroes according to XKCD.
Now, the Ig Nobel Prize, if you haven't heard of it, is a sort of not very serious thing that's given out in scientific circles, but the idea here is that they recognize scientific achievement that's not your standard double-blind, sort of very serious men in lab coats kinds of studies, that things that people would normally find ridiculous or odd, those things can still contribute to scientific understanding. And the text of his award reads as follows from the Ig Nobel site. To Robert A. Lopez of Westport, New York, a valiant veterinarian and friend of all creatures great and small, for his series of experiments in obtaining ear mites from cats, inserting them into his own ear, and carefully observing and analyzing the results. And he was so popular as a guest at this Ig Nobel Prize ceremony that he was invited back the next year and gave a speech where he in part said of the American Medical Association, "Don't worry about germs and bugs. If your time ain't come, not even a doctor can kill you."
I think that that's probably wrong. I think a lot of doctors would know how to kill you pretty efficiently and quickly. Have you ever seen the presentation of the Ig Nobel Prize, or like what their trophies look like?
I have heard about them. I know that they have a person on stage that if you go for too long in your speech, they start yelling about how they're bored.
Yeah, they've got that. It looks like that people are throwing paper all over the place. Like each year's a different thing. Like this year's like this is from 2015. It's a potted plant with a bunch of like cards stuck to it. Other years it's like a hammer and a case. One year it's like a lunch tray with a bottle glued to it. It's really not a prestigious looking award.
I think they're intentionally not prestigious. They're poking fun at themselves, and they understand. I think also that's a good... Science doesn't always need to be stuffy, Tony.
Yeah.
I understand that there's rigor involved, and mathematics takes a lot of work to learn, but I enjoy their approach of embracing the weird side of science. I do want to mention, though, the experiment part is basically over, but I did want to say about this guy. He died in 2007 at the age of 85, presumably not of ear mite related diseases. And I looked at his obituary page. His family put up a really nice obituary for him and talked about all of his accomplishments. And if you search for this guy online, 90% of what you're going to find is about this one experiment this guy did when he was 71. And this crazy thing that he subjected himself to and won the Ig Nobel Prize and all that stuff. But he had this whole other life and people in his life who did not care at all about that stuff. He was a vet for over 50 years. He had 14 children. He was married for over 50 years. He ran 65 marathons.
That's a lot of running. Like, just offhand, that's hundreds and hundreds of miles in competition, not counting training.
Yes. And yet to us, the internet plebeians, he will always be known as the guy who purposely put ear mites into his ears. So let that be a lesson to you. You never know what you're going to get remembered for.
Yeah.
But it might be something dumb.
For most of us, it's probably going to be something dumb.
If we get remembered at all.
Yeah. Now I'm sad. Thank you all for listening to another edition of Bad Ideas. If you have bad ideas that you want us to check out, send it to our email at
badideasshow@gmail.com.
Also, we are a new show, so we really could use some love as far as sharing it with your friends. You can find it on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/humanechoes. If you leave us a review at iTunes, that would help us out a ton, or any other podcast platform that allows reviews. But yeah, if you enjoy this, do tell a friend, do make sure to share it, and that'll go a long ways in us getting you more and better bad ideas over time. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you very soon.
And remember, as we have learned this week more than any of the other weeks, sometimes a bad idea works out. So don't be afraid to try things.
Yeah, fail up, or however they say it.
That's what I say.
Yep. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.